All right. So, Kaz, just as last time, I'm gonna have you start. This was a really good topic, and I kind of want to see where you spin off to begin. I know you want to do a lot of freeform tonight.
Yeah.
So I had a roundabout idea of how, like, I've utilized different essential positive or constructive ways with a lot of my energy, both aggressive or compulsive, whatever they may be. Even with my clinical depression till this day, that I still have not kicked yet, and that's okay. But I'd love to hear some of your methodologies and kind of where you wanted to start with tonight.
I don't. Hold on. I need to take this collar off of him because it has a bell and it's going to be distracting in the recording. This is my distraction and I is him. What the fuck? I don't even know how this collar works. I guess we're just gonna
Is it
deal with
like
it
one
at
of
all.
those little clips?
I don't know. I'm not gonna fuck with it. It's there. It's there. You're just gonna have to deal.
This is where we live now.
Yeah, my distraction boy. He'll literally just chill with me the whole time. It's so funny. So I just had my therapy last week sometime. I don't even remember what day it was, but a lot of what we talked about was how I tend to retreat inside myself with my emotions and how I spend most of my time when I'm going through a struggle not letting anyone help me go through my struggle, but instead just really taking it on myself and retreating into myself and my own imagination. Um, and how at certain times that can be healthy, and then other times it can be really unhealthy. And so, in regards to that, with a lot of unhealthy thoughts that I have about myself, my therapist gave me a technique called the 3D technique to approach overcoming those thoughts. And there's different uh, there's actually a lot that goes into it, but I kind of just cliff noted it. So the first one is disputing, and really the power of writing and what that can do for any basic human being. And I know I'm not the only person out there that has a negative self image, or like, wakes up, looks in the mirror, and then sees something that isn't existent, whether it be physical or mental, struggling with the feeling of feeling unworthy or feeling like you're not good enough for something. Um, and that's like one of the big punches right there is being able to dispute it. And it's not easy to dispute it, but to pull out a piece of paper and, like, let's say you think you're not worth time to someone, whether it be a friend or a romantic partner or your parents. It could be anything. And then on that paper, you would be arguing basically like from like a lawyer standpoint, against why that thought isn't true. So like, for if it were my parents, right, and I'm like, man, I'm not worth my parents' time, I'd start having to put down, well, first off, I'm their kid. Second off, they give me this much time at this time, and they're human too. Like, just really putting down, basically like bullet points as much as you can think of, that would go against the idea, and then rereading it, because reading it's important, and absorbing it and spending time with that. And what you're doing is it goes right back to that tall grass that you walk through in your brain, where you're leaving a path, so to speak. And the more you walk that path, you're leaving the grass bending more and more and more, to where when you go to walk a path again in your brain likes to think about what you think about the most. So like, if you just consistently keep thinking that thought instead of battling it, you're just going to keep going straight to that path because it's the easiest path to take. So the concept is that it's not easy to do this, but eventually it will be easy if you keep doing it, because you're working that brain muscle that's going to help you to adapt and get to a point where you're battling those thoughts and then having better thoughts instead. And so you start walking the new path, and then eventually it's easy to walk that new path. And disputing is the first step, and this is more for the harder thoughts to deal with, as opposed to the simple ones that you can just filter out. um, And so if you've disputed it and then the thought comes back, then you have to distract. And this has been my main focus, is learning the difference between a healthy distraction and shoving stuff inside of yourself and repressing whatever it is you're feeling. So for me, my big distractions have been anime, food, going on walks, talking to the people that are important to me, playing guitar, playing video games, working out. But those are all distractions that I can approach in my, like, if I'm at home, those are distractions that I can approach at home, right? I can play video games at home. But there's a different side of it where if you're having these thoughts, or maybe you're having an anxiety attack because of these thoughts, and you're in line at the grocery store, right? There's actually other techniques that you can use that are more in the moment. And essentially, the concept is that your mind can only think about one thing at a time. And that's true for pretty much any human. No matter how much you think you're multitasking, your mind is actually still just doing one thing at a time. Like you're not doing two things. That affects a lot when it comes to being able to control your anxiety and your mental health. So if you're sitting at the grocery store, my therapist gave me 3 techniques, and then I had already had one that my marriage counselor gave me. So essentially, you can sit there and say your ABCs backwards. And what that does, if you're not good at saying your ABCs backwards, is really takes away your thought process on anything that you were thinking, because you're so focused on saying the ABCs backwards. Another one is 4-7-8 breathing. So you breathe in for 4 seconds. And I think for this one, this is what helps me with it, because a lot of the times I can't just breathe. I can't control my own breathing if I'm having anxiety or I'm freaking out, but I can control the counting. And so even if you haven't reached that point where you're breathing with the counting, eventually it'll line up if you just start counting. So for me, you breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold it for 7 seconds, you let it out for 8 seconds, and you just keep doing that until all of that shit just kind of like disappears, so to speak, and then you can move on through your day, your existence. The other one is the 5 senses technique. So, and this one is actually a really big one for pretty much anyone. But if you know anyone that's like on the spectrum or like has autism, this is one that my nephew had to use, because he would have crowd anxiety, and so for him, he had to have headphones on to where he couldn't hear things if he was too overstimulated. But if we didn't have the headphones, all we could do was approach the 5 senses technique. So what that is looking around and seeing 5 things you can see, 4 things you can smell, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can touch, and 1 thing you can taste. And what that's doing is taking your brain and focusing on, once again, something else that's not the current thing that's giving you the anxiety. And
Right.
then the last one, this one's actually used on PTSD. People with PTSD is rapid eye movement therapy, and you can do it on yourself as well. You just go to the store, buy a stress ball, and then you throw the stress ball to your left hand, to your right hand, to your left hand, to your right hand. And the trick is you're following the ball with your eyes, and you're rapidly moving your eyes, and then before you know it, that's all you're focused on. You're not fixated on anything else. And the rapid eye movement actually helps take your brain away from whatever you're thinking about. So those are the 4 like techniques for in the moment. I can't run to the things that help me more, like video games, working out, all of those things. That, like I said at the beginning, this has been my main distraction for a while too, is just having a cat, and animals just sense what you're going through, and it's easy to be able to find comfort and focus on an animal, and then you stop focusing on yourself and what you've been worried about. And then the last one is dial up, and this one I think is one of the biggest ones. It's like if you're playing Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and you've hit that point where you can't answer a question, or you really just can't get over this thought, you can't achieve what feels like is impossible. You have to have, I'd say, at least three people, or try to get three people that would be willing to answer the phone and call them. And when you call them, the rules are no talking about the bad thought or whatever it is you're going through, and then to focus on them and ask them how they're doing, and then get them to start talking about their day and their existence. And before you know it, you're in a full engulfed conversation about something that's completely different than what you were struggling with. Now, this is something that's used healthily if you're avoiding thoughts that you should be avoiding. Whereas if you're having thoughts that you shouldn't, and I guess the big distinguisher between thoughts that you should and shouldn't be avoiding is important in that aspect. Good and bad thoughts are essentially, good are things that you can control. Good are positive thoughts, and good are rational. So, true thoughts. So if I'm like, wow, this apple tastes good, that's a good thought. Whereas a bad thought is something that you cannot control, something that is irrational, and something that is negative. So if you're struggling with a thought like, oh, this person isn't texting me, they must hate me, I'm not good enough, I'm not worth the time, that's irrational, because any situation could be going on to where they can't text you. They could be asleep, they could have a broken phone, they could have been doing laundry or some shit. But also it's irrational to jump to a conclusion that you're not good enough, and it's also out of your control if they talk to you. It's out of your control completely. So spending time on a thought that you can't control is a waste of time. And in order to move forward with positive thinking and a positive path, neurological pathway, it's important to be able to filter those out. And when you can't filter them easily with like visual meditation, that's when you jump to the dispute, that's when you jump to distraction, and that's when you jump to dialing up.
So basically the last methodology is what I want to highlight most specifically. So it's almost a sort of positive cognitive dissonance. Not to get too overcomplicated with grammar here, but essentially what I utilize a lot, the greatest thing that I learned from high school was referred to a two-step method, a much more simplified variation of using something like the rapid eye or the 5 cents, where to break it down for my young brain at the time, the two-step method, and anybody can utilize this well, see if this works a little more easily for you, if you don't want to go do the thorough research. The two-step method is essentially from where you stand. You can pout, you can scream, you can be angry, let yourself feel. When you take the first step, you acknowledge that this is a problem that is no longer in control or something that you should worry about at this current time, because it's causing a large damper on your performance as a person and who you're trying to be or who you want to be that day. It's changing who you are. And when you take that secondary step, you immediately take that plunge forward and continue moving. Now, you can always go back if you feel that you're able to understand and able to break down what's going on. But the design of the two-step is literally, you take that second step, don't worry about it. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. We need to take 2 steps forward and figure out what we're going to do next, how to deal with the situation, and how to go.
I think for me, another big portion of that difference between positive and negative thoughts that people like I've had to consistently remind myself of is, and like you said, you're just sitting here and you're either going to feel everything or you're going to step forward and approach everything. It's also a concept of the things that you can and can't control. There's two really big ones that we cannot control that people don't think about, and that's, you can't control the past and you can't control the future. You just can't. There's no person on this earth that can say, yeah, I'm going to change the past, or yeah, the future is going to be this because I said so. It's actually quite the opposite. The only thing that you can control is right now, the decisions that you make right now. So the only thing that you should be actively worrying about is the moment that you're in when you're in it.
Exactly. versus worrying about untangible or unforeseeable goals that don't quite fit the puzzle or fit what's going on. Things that are unrealistic, like you're stating earlier with the texting and calling. I like that. And they're all really positive, excuse me, methodologies. I'll be honest as well, when you're talking about the rapid eye movement and the the 5 cents trick, that was all new techniques to me. So as you were kind of discussing, we were going through, I was reading up a little bit. I was like, oh, okay, that's actually really cool. I've never heard of this before. And just again, really positive cognitive dissonance, putting all that negative energy and turning it into a way to cope and understand how you're feeling in the immediate moment and be able to process by giving yourself, like what we're talking about tonight, a healthy distraction. So I think that is really important. And again, shout out, dude. You're going, you're getting places, you're talking to people. And I think, honestly, I think that's the most important thing. And I've talked about this with you before. And for myself, when you and I hadn't talked for a while and everyone's worried about me, um, it's really important that you try and seek help in any way, shape, or form. If not professionally, then talk to somebody that you trust and don't feel like you're alone in any way, shape, or form. Hell, I've talked to a bunch of strangers, and I sometimes feel like that's extremely beneficial because you have people who are unbiased and can't really judge or don't want to judge because they don't know you. And I think that can be really beneficial as well. Now, that doesn't work for everybody. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm a medical professional, and by no way, shape, or form are we medical professionals or licensed. This is strictly based on our opinions and our experiences. But feel free to share at any point in time. Or if you guys had any questions about anything Cass said currently, please let us know in the chat as well. One
Jesus
minute.
said, honestly, I think I battle the same thing over and over again. I feel okay and seem okay, but I feel like my thing is when something goes bad and then realizing that you're not okay and not knowing how to express what's wrong with me, I honestly stress more over not knowing exactly how to come out with what's wrong. So, is anything wrong at all? So I've had a lot of situations like that where I just like get flooded. That's the terminology I like to use, is flooding, where an emotion just pours into you, and that's actually perfectly natural and perfectly normal. And although there is a reason for the emotion, it's not abnormal to not know what the reason is, or to not know how to approach knowing, or how to not know how to open up about what it is. um, that's a point where you might need professional help, but it's also a point where I think one big thing me and my therapist covered as well, which has helped me a lot, is comprehending the difference between an introvert and an extrovert. So, and this is a really big deal for everyone, because if you're an introvert as opposed to an extrovert, you're going to handle your emotions and you're going to handle your healing process and your existence completely different. So one big thing, essentially, what my therapist explained to me was, as an introvert, and it's possible to be an outgoing introvert. An introvert doesn't just mean that you always want to be alone and you always want to be away from people. What it means is, as an introvert, you gather your energy to go through things, to hold other people's space, everything in between. You gather your energy on your own. Whereas an extrovert actually gathers energy when they're with other people. And that's a very real thing. So especially with this pandemic, it's been going on, a lot of people have had less of an ability to be around others. So if you're an extrovert, you have to figure out a way to obtain and gather your energy with other people that you feel safe gathering with. Whereas if you're an introvert, this has been somewhat easier for you in the pandemic, because not that you don't want people around, but you gather more energy when you're on your own. So for me, I'm very introverted in the way that I gather my energy and deal with myself and deal with my emotions, and it's easier for me to figure out the reasons for what I'm feeling and everything when I'm on my own. But I also thrive on social interaction, and it's like very important to my mental health that I can have social interaction. So like, I'm both, but where I gather my energy is 100% on my own. I don't gather energy when I'm with other people. When I'm with other people, I'll spend the whole night, I'll have tons of fun doing whatever it is, like if we go to a concert or whatever. But then at the end of the night, I'm ready to go the fuck home, get into my bed, and be like with myself or with the people that are close to me or my animals. That's the side of me that I've had to work on understanding more, because I've been dedicating a lot of my time to those around me and their mental health space, and not enough time to my own. Whereas an extrovert really likes to spend that time with other people and gathering their energy from being around other people.
If I can too, I want to touch base with, regardless of what you identify as, or if you're a combination of both, which she's saying is a possibility as well, if you guys didn't catch that earlier. Um, when, and I feel like this goes back to the communication snippet that we talked about a little bit last week as well, Jesus. If you're somebody like myself who, from time to time, or really a lot of the time, struggles with communicating exactly the way they're feeling, I catch myself on more than one occasion that I refer to it as bottlenecking. Other people refer to it as bottling up. Um, when you bottle up all that emotion, or you find yourself in a situation where you can't comprehend, or if you do comprehend, you just can't put into words or describe or explain the way you're feeling. Honestly, one of the greatest tools, kind of like what Kaz said at the very beginning, is write down exactly the way you're feeling, exactly as you have it in your internal monologue, and give it to somebody you absolutely trust. Now, I would recommend to have a conversation with that person and say, hey, I can't explain the way I'm feeling with you right now. I'm very frustrated. I'm confused. I know what I want to say. I just can't do it. Could you read this for me? I felt that for me, that was really helpful because there's a lot of times where I can't say something because I'll get frustrated or I'll stutter too heavily, like I always do, because I'm processing so quickly, or I'm not sincere enough in what I'm trying to say, or I try and swing that kind of witty comedic humor that I use as kind of like a cloak or a mask, like Kaz said last week, or excuse me, 2 weeks ago. So I think that's one methodology that can work very, very well. Before we continue going as well, there's a comment from Cujo I wanted to highlight here. So Cujo says, one thing I've been noticing that I've been doing is putting people on red, like this one lady and I were hitting off, then I just started leaving her on red. It is my worry that I'm not good enough for her, so I leave her on red. And then Layla had a comment here as well: is can't extroverts gather energy from meditation? So I want to go into Kuja's a little bit more in depth here. So I want to touch base briefly on Layla's. So meditation, if you follow actual Buddhist practices or religions, at least coming from Asian American standpoint, where Buddhism and meditation is very big in my family, meditation can be very, very beneficial. From experience as a young child, I had a lot of issues with temperaments. I had a very short temper, and it took me a long time to get to where I am now, where I'm more in control of that temper. And meditation was a really great tool for me to just gather my thoughts. And for me, it wasn't necessarily humming or focusing on a single thought, it was focusing on every sound that I heard around. And I didn't meditate in a quiet place. I meditated in a park. I meditated outdoors where I can hear different triggers, different sounds, and process the way those made me feel. So meditation can be very broad. I feel like it's very simplified these days, but it's extremely broad and it can be helpful if that works for you. And you don't actually have to sit there and close your eyes. Meditation can also be a form of just sitting there looking at a singular spot, like I do all the time when I zone out. It can be, you can be reading a book and you're absorbing the information, but at the same time, you're creating your own cognitive dissonance and you're meditating, and that's your way of coping and understanding and processing. So if that kind of makes sense, Layla, and I can expand there. If Cass has something you wants to add to that as well, that's just personal experience and from what my family does with meditation and what I did as a child.
I think a lot of meditation is also just being still, and there's two sides to it. Uh, yes, it is very possible to gather energy from meditating, but it's also extremely possible to expend energy while meditating. And that all depends on where you're at mentally when you're doing it. Um, and you're not always going to be able to control that. There's times where you can be meditating and it's really difficult to meditate or obtain that process of sitting still, so you're actually putting a lot of energy into achieving it. But then there's times where it comes super easy and you're actually gaining more energy out of it. That's not to say that either one is bad or good. Regardless, if it helps you, it helps you. But and yes, extroverts can, there are other ways to gather energy without people, even if you're extroverted. A lot of people think that if you're extroverted or introverted, that's a stuck one and done deal. But uh, I think that it's important to comprehend that tomorrow you could be extroverted, but the next day you could be introverted. There's days where you're going to be like, yeah, I want to be alone. This is what I need right now. But then there's also days where you're like, I don't want to be alone. I want to go sit with my best friend and do literally nothing. It's the same concept. It's whatever is going to bring you your energy and what you need to heal and approach. So, Jesus says, yeah, I'm an introvert. I may seem outgoing, but I'm not. It's all pretend. I'm a sad boy most of the time. I make people laugh so they won't be sad boy. Sad boys with me. There's only space for me. So it makes sense to lean on laughter. Laughter is nothing but a good thing, and it provides a certain atmosphere and a certain energy. But there's also a need in everyone's life to have a more serious tone, whether you believe in that need or not. There's a point where no matter who you are, you need to know that someone cares about you on a real level, and you need that feeling of love and appreciation. And I know that you have that somewhere in your life, Jesus, but it's also important to be open and communicate. Like you're saying that most of the time people can't tell when something's wrong, and that doesn't mean you're fucked up or anything. That just means that you haven't communicated it and people can't read you, which is normal. Like, not nobody in the world is a psychologist. You know what I mean? Like, unless they've gone to college and gotten the degree, everybody that you're going to approach on the streets, you can't just assume they're going to be able to see your body language and know how you're feeling. Like, I couldn't look at you and know how you're feeling. I couldn't look at Raz and know how he's feeling because I've never studied that side of human existence. And that might also be another thing where you'd see a professional and be like, hey, like, how do I approach communicating my feelings? Because that's one of the hardest parts, is keeping it inside instead of communicating it with people around you. And Ramsey said, I think it's really hard to figure out where to start when you feel like a piece of shit and you hate yourself, because depression tells you that. Depression also makes it so hard to get into any sort of positive space because you can't lose yourself. How do you fix you? So it's not fixing you. It's fixing your mental health. It's fixing your neurological pathway. Your depression is not who you are, first of all. And I'm going to say this a lot to as many people as I can. It's
Right, absolutely. I'm the exact same way, Grant.
It's very important to comprehend that it's okay to need professional help. And if you are struggling with anything from depression to anxiety or anything, and it's completely out of your control, and none of these exercises or techniques that we show you here are helping, you might need a professional. And some people might not even need medication. That's perfectly okay. Not everybody has control over. My therapist tells me this every single time, that there's like 160,000 thoughts that go through your brain every day, and there's no way you're going to control every single one of them. And that's true for every single human being. So for me, my advice when you're approaching that, because a lot of people think that your first steps have to be really big ones to overcome your depression or to overcome the problems you're going through. And this is something that I have to consistently tell myself and what I tell others, because people think that we as humans just shot out the womb when we're walking, but we weren't. We were babies, and we had to learn to walk, and we had to learn to do everything that we've ever had to learn to do. And that's why it's important to comprehend baby steps, because a lot of us didn't go through a childhood where we were taught how to take care of our mental health, or we were taught how to deal with society, or deal with adult responsibilities, or deal with loss of a loved one. That's not something anyone can teach you. That's only something experience can teach you. And so it's important to take these baby steps with yourself and take it slow, one step at a time. And you say, I have a therapist, but I think I need to shop around for a new one. If you go to a therapist and they are not working, that's okay. It's okay to find a different therapist. It's okay to look through 20, 30, 40, 50 therapists until you feel you're with the right person who's going to help you feel what you need to feel.
Exactly.
Just because they went to school for it, doesn't mean they're going to connect with you.
Right. You got to think about this, and I know this is a weird way to explain it, but this is how I thought about it as well, is that whenever you're shopping for something that you really like, do you, especially if it's expensive, do you sit there and go to the one place all the time, or do you shop around and compare prices? 9 times out of 10, you compare prices. In this situation, you're the most valuable product here, and that person's there to assist you. So if you don't feel like you're getting the help that you need, go somewhere else. Because this person has to not only be somebody that you can confide in and understand and help you process the way you're feeling, they become pretty damn close to your best friends because you tell them everything about yourself. And you got to understand too that when you're talking, don't expect it that overnight everything's going to be hunky dory and be okay. You're going to feel pretty vulnerable. It's going to be a very awkward experience. And talking from experience as well, for those out there who do suffer with clinical depression or depression in any way, shape, or form, diagnosed or not, it's a very uncomfortable conversation to have with people when you're first chatting about it, because like I've mentioned so many different times in these coffee talk streams, depression is seen as something that's so, at least not so much now, but previously was something that you kept very quiet, especially not to throw gender in here too much, but as a man, a lot of time it's, why don't you understand how you're feeling? Like you're supposed to be strong. It's like, well, fuck you, first off. Secondly, I've been in that experience where I've almost taken my life. And the biggest thing for me is I felt like it was extremely shameful to have that conversation, especially with family. But I took it upon myself when I hit a very comfortable point talking to somebody who gave me therapeutic methods. And I'm diagnosed with serotonin. I take 25 milligrams every day. And I'm not ashamed to say that because it's helped me tremendously. And I think once you get more comfortable and understand that you're not trying to defeat depression so much as take control of how you're feeling that day. You you're not looking for a cure all. It's not something that changes overnight. It's something that you yourself have to work through, and maybe you need an additional assistance, maybe you don't. If you're afraid of medications, that's okay. Don't take medications for it. Find other methods like talking to therapists, going to support groups. There are support groups online and in Discord that I'm a part of. There's an actual Discord for people who deal with this, if you didn't know. And you just got to find ways. And sometimes another way to positively distract, like I like to do, is sometimes I focus more of my selfless energy by trying to make sure that the other person across from me is okay. That can be destructive as well. Don't get me wrong. But a lot of times that makes me feel good knowing that someone else is genuinely happy and that, you know, they're leaving the conversation happier or have some type of insight from the time we started to the time they left. But again, don't feel like it's shameful if you need to talk about it with anyone. If you don't know who to talk to, like you can hit me up, you can hit any of us up. If you're from Kaz's stream, you don't know me very well, and you're like, damn, I don't know how to talk to this dude. Just lay it all out. I'm the least judgmental person, and coming from experience and talking to these people and feeling that shame instantly change over time is such a gratifying feeling because you feel like you can take on the fucking world. Pardon my French, but you really do. Because I could care less about what people think of me. I'm here to tell you, first and foremost, you're not alone. And it does get better over time. It's not going to happen overnight. And I know it's an old saying, some people are annoyed by it, but Rome wasn't built in a day. And you yourself are a beautiful city. It just takes time. You got to build yourself up, and you are going to crack and tumble every now and again. I have days where I don't want to get out of bed. I have days where I don't want to stream, but I focus that energy and say, I want to be there for people. I want to have a good time. I want to change. I want to make someone laugh and smile or just be like, yo, this Asian guy's weird as shit. And I think that's important. I'm switching that and finding that healthy distraction like we talked about.
So I think toppling off those healthy distractions, if anyone in chat has something specific that they do um, that helps them reach that distraction point, throw it in chat so we can start reading them out and giving those distractions. And I'll kind of talk about mine, but I'm a very creative person, whereas not everybody in the world is an incredibly creative person like Raz, who does not have
Nope.
that same flow. So he'll be
Nope.
able to talk about his that way, because there's two sides to hobbies and to everything. So for me, I think time with animals is really big. With my dogs, my cat, those things help me a lot to divert my focus away from myself and my own inner struggle. I think food, if you take time and dedicate, there's two ways you can go about it with food. You can cook food yourself, which is a different form of art, but you also sit down and you'll just focus on trying to make something taste good and then eating it and enjoying it. if you don't have that kind of time, going to your favorite diner and getting your favorite dessert, even if you're alone, is also a really good way to extend your focus into something else as opposed to the thought you're going through. Um, for me, also a big one is nature, especially if it's raining or like thunderstorming outside. It's really good for me to be able to walk outside, and most of the time I'll actually go out into the rain and just feel it. Even if I'm not in a bad mood, that's something that just makes me feel good. Um, Always has ever since I was young. And so like I'll go out and get drenched in the rain just because it's a feeling that I enjoy. Um, Also, hiking type deals as well, going out into nature and really just enjoying hearing and seeing and enjoying the sensory aspects of being in nature. Video games are probably a big one for both me and Raz because and the thing with video games is there's so many different aspects you can take to be distracted by a video game. For me, I like to play horror games and scare the shit out of myself. I also like to play online competitive games. And I like to play story games that have really solid graphics and animation within its nature, like Uncharted or Horizon Zero Dawn. Um, and for me, also, a lot of the time, streaming is actually a really good release for me because it gives me the ability to be distracted by everyone that comes into my chat and talks to me. Um, it sometimes I can't control what I'm thinking though, and streaming doesn't help at all. But sometimes it is a good release for me. Working out is one of the biggest. Uh, Almost any psychologist will tell you 100% that one of the biggest helps for mental health, for depression, and it's actually kind of crazy because it literally releases chemicals in your brain that your brain needs to be happy, is just exercising, some form of exercise, whether it's running, lifting weights, playing frisbee, throwing a football around. Any form of like exercise, going on a walk is really big for your brain. It's really good for distraction. Going on a walk is an iffy one because some people think when they go on walks, some people completely divert away from thinking when they go on walks. So it really depends on what you think at that point with your own brain. For me, one of the biggest ones is music, and this can be playing music, sitting on my guitar, sitting on my piano, playing drums, expressing myself, writing, learning new songs, or for me as well, like when I'm at work, I struggle a lot with negative thoughts at work. And if you just turn on, and this is one thing my therapist actually deliberately told me to do, and it's helped me a lot, just turn on music that you really like, that makes you feel comfortable or makes you feel happy, and sing to it. It doesn't matter how good you are at singing, sing to it, because the act of singing to the music that you like will completely take your brain away from everything. And that's one of the biggest things that's helped me. And then outside of all of those things, watching, specifically for me, anime, there's a lot of sides to anime that you don't really realize until you've watched it, where they're teaching you things like how to approach loss, how to approach um, heartbreak, how to approach betrayal and stuff like that, that you don't realize they're putting it. But if you have a passion for a TV show or a movie or a cartoon that you like to watch, those things can help you a lot to divert your focus away from your own mental thoughts. So for me, those are probably my top ones. And if anyone's like struggling to think of things, I recommend writing these down and taking them. And next time you feel like you need to distract yourself, you have a list to try out.
And see what works for you. It's
Right.
all trial and error. And that's been one of the biggest things for me as well. Before we dive too deeply into other distraction methods, I really want to talk about one of the things Jesus hit here. He goes, "That's how a conversation went with my girl this morning. She's like, I can't read you. You aren't even close to what I think." And she told me to tell her what I did. What did I feel? Sorry, my English is terrible tonight. And I couldn't even think of what to say, just be pissed off. And I can't be like, well, I'm sad or mad and come up with the correct reason as to why I would feel that. So one thing I want to talk about very, very briefly is again, and I hate to make it sound so deep or dampen the mood, but that can be a form or even mild form of depression or having to deal with any type of social anxiety or just conversational skills in general. It doesn't mean that you're not intimate with your partner, that you can't connect with them. It's that you're not understanding how you're feeling at the time. A prime example is literally before I started streaming and started before I hopped in your chat, Kaz. I had a conversation with Gracie where I was struggling just taking out a SIM card out of my phone. And it sounds like something so minuscule and basic, but there are times where, especially with dealing with the difference in serotonin and just transitional feelings throughout the day, I got very, very frustrated. And she kept trying to tell me, hey, calm down, like it's going to be okay. It's not really a great way to calm someone down. We both do it to one another. But you also have to take a step back when you're in that situation and understand that the other person is only trying to help. And for a lot of people like myself, that can be difficult at times. But always realize the other person who's trying to make you feel better, whoever that may be, is not your enemy. They're trying to make sure that you're okay. And they're wanting to reach out to you because they don't know what to say or what to do in that situation. And sometimes it can take time. But the most important thing is that it's okay to say, I don't know, Jesus. There are days where I'm driving with Gracie. We went to a really nice German town here in Texas that's referred to as Fredericksburg. And we were on the way there. And I love going to Fredericksburg. It's one of the most beautiful places I think that's close to me. And the entire car ride for roughly about an hour and a half, I was just dead silent. It's not that I wasn't there in the moment with her. It's not that I wasn't excited. It's that I wasn't able to process the way I was feeling right then at that moment because so many things hit me at once. So I may have talked about this on stream previously, but I like to utilize a method that's very common in somebody, not that I have it, but it's very common with somebody who struggles with multiple personality disorder. You use what's referred to as doorways. You create mental doorways. And in my mind, I always have 6 doorways because I tell myself, focus on 6 things. Otherwise, my brain will take over and think about everything under the sun. Each of those doorways represent the way I'm feeling or something that's currently creating an obsession of thought that's distracting me from being who I normally am. So I use an internal monologue and kind of talk to that doorway and say, hey, this is the issue that I'm dealing with in doorway number 6. This is how everything's potentially making me feel that I don't quite understand or quite comprehend right now. I don't want to continue down this doorway or this conversation's bothering me, so I'm going to close that door. And I work down each individual doorway. And I know that sounds crazy for some people, but that's how I've been able to internalize and deal with difficult situations. And it's been very, very helpful. But the reason I'm sharing that and what I'm getting to is a lot of times when you don't understand the way that you're feeling, think of your issue at hand as kind of like a doorway, see if that works for you, and just focus on that doorway for about a minute and say, listen, and you can name them if you want. Like, listen, Philip, you're being an asshole. You're changing the way I'm feeling right now. I'm going to shut this door for a wee bit. I'm going to deal with this later. And if you're forgetful like me, I don't touch it ever again. But that lets me walk away from the issue and utilize an internal 2-step method. Now, whenever I'm calm or even later, like later throughout the day, I always come back and revisit a conversation. I'll say, hey, and this happened. Hey, first and foremost, I apologize just to be formal. And I say, hey, baby, I'm sorry that I was upset. I'm talking about the Fredericksburg drive when I was feeling kind of off. I always say, hey, I'm sorry I was upset. I'm sorry I wasn't quite feeling myself at the time. I was a little frustrated. And I explained that door method to her as well. I'm closing down the doors. I want to be here in the moment. I want to be present now for you. I want to talk. I want to have a great day. At the time, I didn't know how I was feeling. I can't pretend to explain to know how I was feeling now and how I was feeling then, but let's focus on what we're doing right now and go from there. And I know that's a very broken explanation, but for me, that's helped a lot. And being able to take control of things that are outside of my control is literally just shut that door and say, listen, if you were a problem right now, I would have dealt with you. This is something that's out of my control, so I'm just going to close it. And I feel like when you're having that conversation with that significant other, even if you can't make clear communication right out the gate, it's important to revisit that. If not for yourself, then at least to benefit, and I know that might sound counteractive as well, but to benefit the other person, let them know, like, I genuinely appreciate what you're trying to do, and I'm sorry. That helps a lot
I think it's
for me.
also one, it is 100% okay to not know why you're upset. That's normal. It happens. Sometimes you're just sad because you're just sad. It happens to me all the time. But when it comes to you and your partner, whoever you're in a relationship with, there's a lot of big things that you need. It's like Raz said, the that she came up and told him to calm down. Uh, I had a similar situation where I was trying to put a new processor in my PC and I fucked my motherboard up. And Rachel's words to me were, "I'm sorry this happened." Um, and that it was a completely different feeling than calm down, right? But I also don't have hardcore anger problems. So, like, with me, I wasn't really like, I was like, yeah, this fucking happened. That's how I treated it. I was like, now I have to do this, whatever. Like, I just moved forward. A lot of people can't do that. They'll get mad. And so, what's important in situations like that, like yours, where you don't know what you're feeling, you know what feelings you're feeling. You know, you're sad or you're mad. Uh,
Right.
Comprehending what they can do to help you and communicating that before the emotions come. So, in a calm moment, those are the best moments to talk to your spouse about how you can approach comforting one another. Because, you know, everyone has different love languages. So, like, for me, if I'm really sad or I'm upset or even angry, uh, physical attention calms me down and makes me feel better. Scratching my back, playing with my hair, um,
Mm,
massaging my hand, whatever it may be, that's something that's really big for me. So I openly communicate that. And that's what I need to, even if I'm like feeling something and I don't know what I'm feeling, that's one of the biggest things that helps me. Words of affirmation also helps. So someone just sitting there and really talking to me positively about myself helps me. But some people have different love languages and different existences and need different things. Some people need space. Just because you don't like space doesn't mean that's not what they need. So, like, you may see the world in eyes where you're like, man, I know when I'm upset, this is what I like. So I'm going to give this person that. That's the wrong approach because you could be giving them the exact opposite of what they need, what they grew up knowing uh, comfort as. So, like, let's say Raz likes gifts, right? And the beauty of gifts is it doesn't have to be something you spend money on. It can be something you make. It can be anything. It's one of the harder ones to really figure out if it's not your love language. But let's say Raz is upset. He's had a really bad day. He's going through something, but his love language is gifts, and he really likes Naruto. And so I end up at the fucking Walmart knowing he has a bad day, and I buy him a shirt with Naruto on it and just bring it home and give him a Naruto shirt. Well, then he's going to feel significantly better in that moment because I appealed to his love languages and also like provided comfort and helped distract him from what was upsetting him, even if he didn't know what was upsetting him. So like knowing is a harder part sometimes, but being able to communicate that you don't know and then always being able to allow someone to comfort you the way you need to be comforted and knowing how to comfort them is a big part when it comes to being in a relationship. Even if it's a friend, spouse, parent, doesn't matter. Everybody views things differently, and those love languages do change.
hmm
You don't just sit on physical touch for your entire life. Sometimes your love language is going to be different. Like if it's during the cold season, you might be more inclined to physical touch. But if it's hot as shit outside and sweaty, maybe they don't want physical touch at that in that season, and they want something better. But the thing is your significant other or your friends or whoever it may be, they're not going to be able to read your mind and know what you need to feel loved. So the biggest thing you can do to help yourself is communicate it. Because a lot of people do
hmm
pour inside themselves. Like Raz said, he has the door technique. For me, I pour into myself in my own imagination, and sometimes it's really bad, and sometimes it's good, and I put it into something productive like playing guitar. But other times, my imagination goes wild and I'm creating stories in my head or narratives that don't even exist that I have no control over. So sometimes I need to be able to get away from that narrative, and having someone else to help me and distract me in the ways that I like to feel loved is something that really makes me feel better. And that's something that
Mhm.
you can approach with your love languages, with your existence, and also helping your significant other understand how to help you when you're dealing with your suppressed emotions.
Yeah, so two things here I saw in your chat. First and foremost, Peyton, I'm glad that works for you as well. I agree that it can be a really great big fresh of air, and it does take time. You eventually will get to the point where I'm at now, where I can completely take anger or frustration and kind of manifest that into that doorway and literally slam that shit shut and shatter it. It might sound crazy for some people, but that's how that works for me. Jesus, when I'm talking about using and utilizing this cognitive method, I'm not saying that I'm not processing or dealing with that emotion. I'm saying that in this present moment, when I'm with my significant other, I don't want to feel that. And I don't want to be the person that these emotions are trying to take control over and make me be, because that's not who I am. I always revisit the conversation. And for me personally, I like to apologize because I don't like being frustrated or feeling anything other than myself. So I take time to just sit back and make sure I revisit that conversation. Because again, for me and our relationship, especially because she lives so far from me, she lives 13 hours away. So communication is a huge deal to us. I always make sure I come back and revisit the conversation and say, hey, I'm sorry I was upset earlier. And her response is almost always, it's okay. Like, I understand or I get it. She's always there and she's super understanding and patient with me. But the most important thing is I come back and revisit and say, this is the way I was feeling, or this is how I think I was feeling, or this is what was distracting me. I don't know why it got to me at that time, but this is this is where I'm at now. I understood what was going on and I'm sorry that this happened this way. So I'm not asking for the gratification or the validation. I'm going back and doing it as a favor to myself and saying, that's not who I am. I don't want to present myself that way. Thank you for being patient with me and understanding. Let's talk about it. And you might not be at that point. That might not work for you just yet, but it's methodologies that you can attempt to utilize and see if they fit. And that's what this whole coffee talks or this whole kind of decompression and utilization or methodologies is for tonight. I was just letting you know what we've tried, what we go through, what works, what doesn't work, and see if it.
Yeah, I think something that I've been having some issues with too is with everything that I've been going through. I have had some people within my community reaching out to me with concerns that they made me angry or that I didn't like them because I wasn't including them when I was playing video games or when I was doing certain things, and I wasn't giving them the quality time that they need to feel loved. Um, and I had to sort of explain for me that I'm retaining my own space right now and that it's not them. There's nothing they did that caused me to create that space, but um, it was really just me comprehending how much space I can hold. Because although I love every single person in my community dearly, and I will always do my best to go out of my way to be there for you when you are going through something. Um, I will always try to put your needs first. Sometimes, especially as of lately, I've really realized that I need to be able to take my time and retain my space, because if I keep letting other people in, my space gets smaller, and then eventually I'm not comprehending or processing my own emotions and my own feelings, and then next thing I know, I've lost complete control over my thought process and my depression and my anxiety. So, with that being said, I think it is super important still to acknowledge that we aren't professionals, that we go through shit regularly, and that if you ever feel like we don't care about you, that's irrational. Um, it's genuinely just that we have our own space to hold, and we're not trained to do this. This is just something that I felt called to do, um, with the rest of Team Confide to be able to provide a safe space for everyone to kind of talk about their struggles and not feel judged, while also maybe learning something that can help you in your baby steps or your day to day when approaching and trying to overcome these things. So everybody here has their own space, and it's really important that you retain your space too. It's not your job to make me happy. It's not my job to
Mm-hmm.
make you happy. It's your job to make you happy, and it's my job to make me happy. It's only my job. It's no one else's responsibility to tend to my mental health.
I think the biggest thing too is to remember that don't expect others, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but don't use others as a crutch with validation or gratification to feel better temporarily. You really need to work on strengthening yourself as an individual and be able to handle the way you're feeling. Because, like I see Ramsey saying as well, if you use the dissociating method too heavily, you could completely create almost like a separate personality where you're hiding behind it and you're utilizing that methodology as a mask. When you disassociate yourself or disassociate your feelings or your struggles by using what like I use as the door method too heavily, you're just hurting yourself. And that's why I think a really important method that I mentioned earlier is I always like to revisit the conversation because I don't want to shatter those doors completely unless it's a very what I refer to them as the demons, or I call them like red doors. Red doors, I break on contact, they're gone. As soon as I slam that door mentally, I remove that feeling altogether because that's really bad negative energy that I didn't want to have and I don't want to possess that day. And I know this sounds very spiritual, but to me, it very much is because it can completely change the way you're feeling that day and change who you see yourself as. And
I
excuse me,
think
sorry.
from that perspective as well, it's important to acknowledge that for a lot of you, it's not just going to be a simple image of a door in your head and slamming it. It's not going to be something that you can approach. I think a big difference between me and Raz is the lack of the creative flow. He's a much more logical thinker, whereas I'm a much more sit in my imagination type person. So like, I can't just put the image in and it be gone forever. I've been practicing it, but I have to do it over and over and over again. And for me, one of the things that helps me with that closure side of it is putting it into art. So if you are an artist
Absolutely.
and that is how your brain works, that red door, instead of it shattering, could become your next big piece of art. That is a very big and good way to express yourself, and then to always know how you conquered what you needed to conquer. Whereas for those of you that don't have that side, and you do think like Raz and you see things like that, it may be easier for you to just slam the door and imagine it shattering, right? But those doors will still always be a part of your existence and your experiences. It's just overcoming them, that and how you overcome them. Everybody does things differently. Things that work for me might not work for Raz, and vice versa. So we're giving you methods and techniques that have helped us, but
Mm-hmm.
you could try it and it could not be the thing that you need.
Right.
But I
And
encourage you to keep searching.
yeah, that door method definitely can be used as a crutch. And that's a really good point, honestly. Don't think of it as a way to completely escape your emotions. I think of it as a way to turn them off in a non-negative way because I always come back and revisit, or while we're doing something and I'm in a more positive state, I start to creep them open and understand and kind of think back and say, okay, well, why was I feeling this way? What's spurred that moment? What spurred that emotion? Why am I feeling this way? And then I talk about it. And sometimes it's with Gracie, sometimes it's with Andrew, sometimes it's just with the mod chat or people in Discord. I just want to see how everyone's doing, and then we have a little conversation about it. So I think it's important if you're gonna try that method, clearly understand the pros and cons and know that, like Kaz said, it's not something that happens overnight. It's something that I did a lot of research into and understanding, and I started following a lot of people who had multiple personality disorder. Not because I felt that that's what I was doing. I have an almost obsessive personality when it comes to my distraction. I'm very, very addicted to knowledge. And like you said, a lot of that has to do with being a more logical person. I like to know things. I consider myself, no pun intended, but to attempt to be a jack of all trades. I might not be good at one particular thing. I might not be able to draw you the next Mona Lisa. I might not be able to solve math because God knows I'm terrible at math. But one thing I can do is I can spurt out a fact, or I can spurt out a way. Um, Thank you, Lauren. I can I can fuck, I forgot what I was gonna say. I can think of something different and utilize that positive energy to learn. I'm big on learning. I hate school, but I'm big at learning random things. And that's why Gracie calls me all the time the king of random shit. Because I know so much random information about things that might not seem very important to some people, but to others, like if you needed somebody on Jeopardy, dog, I got you. Because I promise you, I will know that board, regardless of how difficult it could be. And if I don't know the answer, I will find an answer because that's the way my personality is. And that really helps me cope and understand and really build because I feel like the more knowledgeable I am, the more knowledge I have to understand what I'm going through, or understand how I'm feeling. But
I
also, again,
think
Lauren, thank you for that correction.
for me, when it comes to the personality thing and everything, um, I've never really opened up about this, and this is something Rachel is trying to approach me about, and it's kind of scary to hear because it is definitely something I do. But I really like identify myself with my emotions, and so like I have like a lot of trauma from betrayal and abandonment, and a big part of who I am stems out of that. And so I guess there's a lot of emotions that come with those two things. And a part of me has always identified myself as those emotions. Instead of separating, this is what you feel, uh, I would look at it and be like, this is what you are. So when I'd be sad about being abandoned or losing someone or grief stricken, I am that grief. That is me, as opposed to acknowledging it as a feeling that I can let go of. It was always a feeling that was a part of who I am. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and that's still something I struggle with hard because I've never even assessed or realized that side of myself until just recently. And that's something that I haven't figured out how or what to do about it or how to approach it
Mm-hmm.
because if I'm not sad or if I'm not having these feelings of anguish or abandonment, then I'm not me. That's how my brain like registers it. And it's always been very important for me to be myself. And so there's a point where my clash with my own personality is recognizing that I need to separate myself and who I am from my emotions and what I feel. And I have not been able to do that yet, but it's definitely something I'm probably going to be talking to my therapist about because I don't know how to
So,
approach that.
and I was going to ask you as well, just again from the way that my brain works, looking from an outsider's perspective, because I wanted to try and do something similar when I was first going through that large downward spiral that you and a few select people are familiar with. I was processing a lot and having to deal with a lot, and I didn't know who to talk to or what to do because it was a situation I had never been faced with before. So I felt that if I were to, again, using the word disassociate or kind of reflect on those emotions and kind of say, like, I don't understand how I'm feeling or I don't know how to process this, again, my brain will put it as a person. What I'm getting at here and what I want to ask specifically is do you feel that disassociating those emotions would kind of alienate yourself from feeling that in that particular situation? Is that something you've considered or thought of? Or do you think
Yeah,
about that a little bit different?
I've always had like an obsessive thought process with
Mm-hmm.
my negative emotions and not my positive emotions. And I've always had an obsessive thought process with the bad things in the world. So, like, when an artist that I like dies, I connect and obsess over them more because of the aspect of death. I've always followed true crime, and um, the mind of serial killers has always been something that's been like massively interesting to me because it's something I can't wrap my mind around, is
Hmm.
how someone could have thought it would be okay to do the things that serial killers do. And so uh, it's a big part of who it's. I don't want to say masochist because I don't do it to hurt myself, but it's a big part of who I am to um, be intrigued by the darker side of things. And it's also um, a big part of me when it comes to my feelings and my negative emotions is I feel like it's more important to sit in my negative feelings than I do when I'm happy and sitting in my happy feelings. I don't know why my brain sees it that way. I think it's because as I grew up, I would bottle up those negative feelings and I would end up hurting people around me um, in ways that I would have never comprehended when I would blow up with all of those feelings.
Hmm.
And
When they'd
so,
bottle up and bottleneck.
yeah, instead of letting that explode all at once, I've started learning to take every negative feeling one by one and really just sit and dead it. So, like, instead of meditating on nothing, my brain thinks on the negative. And sometimes it's very damaging because I'm spending so much time focusing on the negative aspects of what's happened to me or what's happened around me that the
It
positive kind of
consumes you.
disappears and it just takes
Right.
over me. But if I don't take that time to feel what I'm feeling, I project those feelings into other people and then feel worse about myself and who I am.
Hmm.
So it's a very big toss up because sometimes, and that's why I've been so focused on distractions, is because with all of the stuff I've been going through, um, in general, there's been so much negative that I've been focusing on, and I'm now at a point where I've drawn the line in the sand, I've drawn the circle, and I'm walking the circle, and I'm tired of walking the circle, and I need to make a new circle where I'm not just cycling through this negative energy and emotion, but instead every time, because I'm done with it. I've had to realize I'm done with the negative things that I have been thinking about. And now's the part where I have to grow and move forward and cut myself away from those things. And a big process of that is disputing, distracting, and dialing up. And that's because especially for me, disputing hasn't been something I've actively been practicing, and I know I need to. But it's the hardest, that's what made it so weird about that technique. Is why would they start with the hardest one instead of the two easy ones? And I think it's because it's the most important one. But
Of course.
the distraction thing I've been very focused on because a lot of these thoughts I can't control, and um I can't do anything but distract myself to get rid of that thought. So I run to the things that comfort me, which at this point isn't a bad thing because I've taken the time to feel. But those negative things will always be a part of what made me who I am. And I think that's a big, like, I have a tattoo on my back that says "Thank you for the tragedy," and that's a quote from Kurt Cobain. The whole quote is "Thank you for the tragedy. It helps me with my art." And that's a really big part of who I am, is taking the bad things that happen to me or around me and turning it into art, because I'm a depressionist when it comes to art. I'm not
Mm.
incredibly good at writing or creating happy things. I've always been better at writing and expressing the sad things, which is also a big reason I identify with my sadness. I don't really identify with my anger. I've never had anger, but my sadness, I've always identified with my sadness. And I feel like it's a big purpose of mine to express that in my art in a way that helps other people identify and deal with their sadness. I
So
feel like that's
almost
been
in
a
a
big part
way,
of me.
and this is just coming from a standpoint again, how my brain works. It's almost in a way that you're kind of like one of the impressionists or somebody from the blue period. And not saying this in a negative way, they were able to put so much power and emotion into just a canvas and maybe lyrical writing or, chords or music in general is your canvas. You're able to project that um,
I
into that
literally
and just
have
overcome.
how can I fucking show this? That tattoo right there. That's Picasso. It's called
Hmm.
the Starving Artist. It's literally straight out of that. It's basically a struggle with being an artist and not being able to make a living, even though your art is important, as it impacted the world the way that it has.
Hmm.
So that the second because Picasso has always been one of my favorite artists when it comes to painting. But yes, essentially, and this is one of the hardest things I've had to deal with because Blake and I were both very big musicians and we created an entire album together and never got to record it before he passed. I feel like if I died and didn't leave my music behind, I failed. That's a really big thing for me. And that's also, I think, why whenever an artist dies that I love, their music is more important because they died. Everything they left behind has more of a message to it to me. And so, I don't know. I
No,
guess
I
that's a
get
big
it.
reason I identify
So
those parts.
I want to take a step back here, not so much to the self-help portion, but just talk friend to friend at this point. So I want to be honest. You put a lot on yourself, man. You think of yourself, and you push yourself to limits all the time, and I see it in literally everything you do. It's always 100% or nothing. There's no happy medium. There's no in between. But as a friend, first and foremost, I want to tell you that I love you. I think you're amazing.
But that
But
is
you
what
need to
I
lay off
do.
on yourself. You really need to lay off on yourself. And what you kind of mentioned earlier, the way that your brain worked and talking about a lot of like the negatives and obsessing over them. I dealt with that a lot myself, and I started thinking of them. And we talked about this before, being your own self cheerleader. You're in your own head a lot. You've said this more than once, and you need to get the fuck out of it because you're an amazing human being. And dude, you're so fucking creative. There's so many ideas that you've bounced off of us in the way that you've led this team for so long. Like you always have passion. And even with your obsession and the dark thoughts that you may have, there's obsession there as well. So I would want to say that like don't always see it as a negative so much more as you are able to clearly identify what your demons are. You just haven't come to terms of sitting down at a table and saying, all right, what the fuck do you guys want? Or saying like, all right, this needs to stop. So I feel like just as a friend, because you are way God, I wish you could fucking see yourself sometimes, dude. I do. And I know that if you did, you'd just be like, I should have did this better. You're just too overcritical about yourself. And I wish you could see that. Hell, your entire community sees that. Your friends, your family see that. But you have such a fucking golden, dude. I swear on it. I wish you could see it from point of view. Because you're a great dude. And I really need you to get out of your own head. Because if we could embody the way that you are now, in all the concepts that we do as a team or just as individuals, I feel like that would make a lot of us a lot better people because you have such a kind heart and you take everything to heart and you consider everyone else to a fault. You're extremely selfless. And it's annoying sometimes when I see you have to go through it. And I love you, man, but it's a fact. I want to talk base as well about you have this concept of what, again, being Asian, this is where I go to, but like almost like a kamikaze style musician, kamikaze artist. Why do you think that you would be so much more heavily remembered or left a legacy if you were no longer with us? I actually say that's quite the opposite. Because there are so many times, and you got to understand this too, Kaz, people go out of their way, regardless of the time that you stream, even when you were streaming at like weird fucking times. I would be sitting there and lurking and just be like, oh, what's Kaz doing today? How's he feeling? And I didn't go there because I just wanted to support you. I went there because I was your friend. And every time I went into your streams, you were funny as hell. And I understand that sometimes that was a mask. I saw right through it. It's not hard. Like before you and I started bringing on other people, I played with you a lot more and I got really, really close to you because I was able to relate to you so heavily. And now, again, speaking from a friend, and I'm sorry if anyone else is looking for more tips from this time, but he just needs to hear this. Get out of your own fucking head, dude. You're an amazing individual. I know that right now your self-confidence isn't as high as it should be. because you're processing a lot and you're going through a lot. But you're an amazing individual. And Jesus, you're the exact same way. Shut the fuck up. There's no room to talk. Maybe I love you, but fuck you at the same time. No, really. Don't get your mind wrapped around this concept where it's like, I want to be remembered when I'm gone. Dude, I want to remember you for who you are right now. I want to remember the funny shit you did yesterday, the funny shit you did last week, because you offer a lot to the world. So don't have this mindset of where you have to go down swinging to be remembered, or that you have to be like Mac and people only talk about you when you're gone. If people are doing that, it's because they weren't here to see who you are and how great you are right now. And they're not willing to see how great you're going to be in 2, 3, 5 years from now. So I think anybody who's saying there, I remember his first album on SoundCloud now, it's like, okay, why weren't you talking about him when he was alive? Because he wasn't relevant to you. You felt the need to say, wow, I remember them, which means to me that there's this big tragedy happening or this big sadness. But don't forget about me, guys. I'm here too. That's a very selfish thought. So what I'm getting at is, dude, you're outstanding. And you need to know that. It's going to take time for you to get back to 100% of who you are. And I'm here for it. I want to see you back at your grace that you are, because you're outstanding. And you really got to know that. Sorry. Kind of sidebarred there, but I wanted to be honest.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact you're not going to fucking take any of these words to heart, because that's the person that you are. You're going to appreciate it, say thank you, and move on. But seriously, go back and watch this one day and just truly understand how great of a human being you are and how much you bring to the table and how much happiness you bring. Even despite what you may be going through in your struggles, you're genuinely a kind-hearted and person. I don't talk to people who are assholes. I cut those people out for a reason. Right. I keep the people that I care about close, and I want to have those connecting conversations with people that matter. You matter. And don't forget. Period.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And Drew makes a great point. So he says, I remember I was wearing his hoodie and you asked if he was streaming and asking about him. That's 100% true, dude. I was genuinely concerned when I didn't see you for a while because I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know if you were going through something, so I didn't want to reach out. I didn't want to make things worse. But he was wearing your hoodie one day when he and I were hanging out, and I was like, damn, I haven't talked to Kaz in a hot minute. I hope everything's going well. I hope he's doing okay. You know, I haven't seen him live. And then I got called out because I never checked Confide chat, but topic for a different day. So that's my fault because I'm bad at communicating when it comes to social media. Like I say all the time, if I didn't have to have a phone, you could take my phone 100%. I wouldn't be upset about it. It's fine. I don't need it. But in all honesty, like I'm glad to know, despite what you're going through, you need to know you're still an amazing individual. It will get better. And for once in your life, please just go back and look at a stream like this or look at a comment that somebody says and really understand the meaning behind it. Don't just read it for face value and move on and say, yeah, but really take to heart what people say because you're outstanding.
I think that's a big part of why I've been so focused on distractions is because I do spend too much time in my head, and that's what the distractions are helping me with, is getting out of my head. But it's also like this right here is a distraction in a way. Being able to sit and discuss everything from a more broad perspective and being able to be comfortable doing it. Obviously, I've opened up about some things that I've never really opened up about before with anyone, but I think in the long run, words of affirmation being a really big part of my love language is hearing things like that does help me to move forward and to overcome my struggles with my own self-worth and my own perspective of myself. And it is something that I've been working on, but it's like I tell everyone, it's just baby steps. It's just like Absolutely. Little tiny baby steps. And like I even to the point where if I'll be talking to someone important to me and they send me a message with a bunch of positive compliments towards myself or my personality, I've been saving those in my notes on my phone so that when I am feeling things, that's also a big part. So if I can't dispute it, I can go back and read how they disputed it, and that in itself helps. So that's been a big thing. So I'll probably come back and watch this.
Yeah, you need to. Because again, it's important. It really is. And we talked about this before of being your own. If you don't have somebody who can be a cheerleader for you or give you those positive words of affirmation, like I have to tell myself all the time, that like you're saying, I'm an asshole. And You talk to me. Exactly. I'm an asshole too, but that's because of our masks, our disguises. That's how we interact because we find comedic relief and humor in that sense. But going back to what we're talking about here, it's like it's important to understand like how valued you are to others, even if you can't validate it all the time. Like I have to find myself, even if where I feel like I'm lying to myself and saying, dude, you're fucking awesome. Like you are. Sometimes you're not enough and you can't validate the way that you're feeling because you have those demons in the backside of your head that say like, no, the fuck you're. And
Yeah,
like you're saying, you obsess over the dark thoughts, but dude, you're outstanding, and you really do need to know that.
I think that's a big part of, because we started that conversation 2 weeks ago, the looking in the mirror and positively talking to yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
especially with words of affirmation being one of my big love languages, is I haven't been dedicating the time to love myself in that way. Like I haven't looked in the mirror and said one good thing to myself the
You
past
need
two
to try
weeks.
it.
It's been the opposite. I'm still walking that circle, that one, but I feel like I'm taking it one circle at a time because there's other circles that I am progressing in, but that specific circle has always been the harder one my entire life is because I've identified with the darker side of myself, with the sadder side, being a part of who I am, and feeling like I might lose who I am if I run away from that side of things. And that's something that I have to overcome. I can't, no one can push me off the ledge. I have to jump.
Right.
And so,
You might need a little bit of encouragement, but you need to sometimes just dive
yeah,
head
yeah,
first and feel the fresh
exactly.
water
Like,
at the bottom. But
yeah.
and honestly, again, from a friend standpoint, I want to touch base on Grant's question here in a second. Um, fuck, what was I gonna say? Oh, yes. Don't feel like you have to tackle that right away, getting into the mirror and dealing with self-confidence. I think it's much more important, again, coming from a friend, not as a booster or talking about anything directly in chat. I think it's really important to deal with the minor details, the baby steps to build yourself up to that point where
Right.
you're handling all those other issues confidently and you say, you know what, I'm okay. And then we get to the self confidence portion and really looking at yourself in the mirror and realizing, holy shit, I am kind of awesome. So it's
Right.
okay to be cocky and boost that side of your ego at times. Don't let it get to your head, of course, which you won't, but you need to look back, be able to have those moments and just be like, you know what, you sexy beast. And I wasn't going to share this on stream, but you said something earlier. I've literally had moments, and that's kind of what inspired that whole concept, being like, yo, dude, fucking gorgeous, sus face or whatever you want to do. It's I've been when I was in college, my first college that I dropped out of, and I'll be honest about that. I had lost my father, and I actually had to deal with a lot of the things myself of putting together, being the youngest child from that side of the family, of putting together the funeral and gathering funds because my older siblings wanted nothing to do with it, wanted no contact, and it was a pain in the ass. So my coping methodology, kind of what Cujo said earlier, was alcohol. Now, when I started to weave off of that side, the reason that looking myself in the mirror and saying, "Hey, you're fucking outstanding," was that really helped me progress my self confidence. And I was just literally piss drunk one day by myself in my apartment, standing on my office chair, shirt off, just rubbing my tummy and be like, look at you, you sexy beast. And for whatever reason, that snapped back, 5, 6 years later. I was like, that was a really big confidence booster. It was a really silly moment for me personally that I didn't think I was ever going to share out loud. But it was big, it was a big deal to me because it was like I was never more confident. And I didn't care who if somebody walked in or if I had friends over. I was so drunk and so happy at the time because I felt like such a weight was lifted off my chest. But what I'm getting at is having those little moments and building up to that point is going to be such a positive, like, release or a positive occurrence that's going to happen. And Jesus, stop hiding behind your mask, damn it.
Fucking Jesus. I can't.
Oh God. But honestly, Jesus, look at some of these methods, man. You need to look back on this as well because you got a great heart. I know a lot of us use an asshole tendency or an asshole personality as a mask to kind of try and bring humor to really not comprehend what's being said here. And you're doing it as well in chat. I'm reading his chat too. Go back at some of these moments and know that you are outstanding. You're an amazing supporter of Kaz as well. You're a great friend. You're a funny guy. Every time you've come in, you've always been the show. But know that sometimes it's okay to step back from that spotlight and really process and understand how you're feeling. And if you can't, you can reach out to anybody. You can literally hit me up one day and be like, "Yo, dude, I'm just pissed off." And if that's all you want to say, then that's fine. If you don't want a response, you just want somebody to voice that to, do it. You need to be able to process those feelings and understand how you're feeling and try and communicate it in any way, shape, or form. I think that's really, really important. Now, I want to get into Grant's comment here, which is a great topic as well. Grant asks, how do you guys handle trust with people? I don't trust as many people. I've been burned a lot, but that's my biggest issue currently. I don't know how to get over this. Now, if you want to, yeah, that's a tough one as well. But
Oh my.
let me go
Oh
ahead and
my.
take point on that. So there's a lot of older terminologies that say, um, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. I don't follow those methodologies at all. I'm a very big forgive and forget type person. But when something doesn't work, like you mentioned earlier, the ex-girlfriend scenario, if something doesn't work to a point and it's consistently causing issues with your self-image or a relationship with someone or the way that you work or your passions or your dreams, then you need to be able to sever those ties. And I'm not saying drop them like a bad habit. Like I had coworkers from my previous job where I could not stand their guts. I thought they're absolutely annoying people because they were extremely egotistical. And I said, you know what? I'm going to handle this from a professional point of view and a professional stance. I'm going to work with these people. I'm going to be the person who I am on a team. But that doesn't mean I have to condone in personal conversations or personal activities with these people. I just need to do what I need to do, excel at what I want to do, and remove myself from any toxic situations. And I think that's important.
I think for
So,
me with the trust thing, uh, especially after facing a lot of betrayal in my life, is acknowledging that I think there's a lot of aspects, and this touches bases on a lot of things we've already talked about. Because for me, I closed up and I shut everybody out. I didn't want to give anyone an opportunity to betray me again, but that's not a way to live, and you're not going to be happy doing that. Acknowledging that there's millions of people in this world, and not one person is the same as the next, and you won't know if you can trust them until you've gotten to know them and trusted the process of gaining trust. And also, what for me, it was also a really big thing of giving myself a chance and comprehending that I deserve to have people in my life that I can trust.
mhm.
And moving forward with that, for me, one of the biggest things that helped me overcome a lot of my trust issues is time. And then when I do have a positive person in my life, I chase that instead of like acknowledge positive and negative, and acknowledge what you have control over and what you don't. Because at the end of the day, you don't have control over the next person's decisions, and you never will. You only have control over your decisions. But find comfort in the fact that you have control over your decisions. And the biggest thing is acknowledging that only you can be responsible for your happiness. And if you aren't happy on your own, you're never going to be happy with someone else, whether it be a friend or a relationship partner or anything. So a big part of that is being able to find your own happiness within yourself and loving yourself, and knowing that you can go through the rest of your life just you, and that you'll be okay. Because then trusting people is easy because it's expendable. It's like for me, even if you were a really close friend of mine or whatever, if you did something to fuck me over so badly that we weren't friends anymore, I still got me. I still got my life. I'm going to be okay. That's a big part of why I've been able to regain my ability to trust other people around me, which took me a lot of time. It took me a very large amount of time to be able to overcome that part of myself and my existence, and actually actively trust people with being open about my emotions, my existence, who I am, and also accepting them to have a space in my life. And also always acknowledging that your space should be priority over anyone else's. You need to be able to hold your space. And if someone is in your life, and trust goes a long way, you tend to learn how you can trust someone or if you can't, because someone will come into your life and they'll be like showering you in gifts that they spend money on. But then when you guys talk, all they want to talk about is themselves. They don't care about your issues. Anytime you bring up your issues, it's a way for them to segue into talking about their issues. Those are
Talking about themselves.
narcissists. Those are narcissists. Don't
Mm.
trust a narcissist. Acknowledge. Start, if you really want to learn to trust people, study psychology and learn how to like see people for who they are. And you're going to overcome and know who you can and can't trust just by how they act around you, even on a first impression. Because for me, I've never studied psychology, but I know for a fact when I feel like I can trust someone and when I feel like I can't. And the hardest part is when you meet someone and they're so good at acting a certain way that you trust them. But over time, everyone takes off their fake skin and you're going to see who they are. And you have to know when that relationship no longer is valuable for you in your space. And it's important to know when to cut ties. You're not a bad person for cutting ties with someone who is bringing negative in your life. So it's important to really just like, it's not so much that you need to trust other people. It's that you need to trust yourself enough to know your ability to keep your space safe. That's it.
And also know that first and foremost to practice what you preach at times, cough, cough. But also, I'll say you guys. But also remember that when you're in a situation like that, don't utilize that person that you fulfill all this trust with or embed this trust with to utilize them as a crutch, because that can be very destructive. And I've done that myself. That's why I bring that up specifically. Jesus, I didn't
Yeah,
think
it's
this
nobody
thing was
else's
on. My
job.
bad.
Right.
Sorry. But when it comes to trust in general, I think it's always important to take that chance. And I know a lot of times the more you're hurt, the more you're kind of more timid when it comes to new things and trusting new people and building that friend group or whatever the situation may be, trusting that significant other, whatever the situation is. So like Kaz said, I myself, and some of you guys know in stream, some of you don't, like I went through a lot and my trust was very much diminished. And I just had to remember that though it might have hurt then and after I processed that no two people are alike. We might have similar tendencies, we might have similar interests, but Kaz and I might be a lot alike in our thinking and in our personalities and having big hearts. That's why I was able to connect to him so quickly, because I think Kaz is a great guy and I think that we can relate on a lot of different levels. And though it can sound weird to some, in my personal opinion, I think spiritually as well, we vibe at kind of the same frequency, if you will. We understand a lot of the way we look at the world and we look at each other and the people around us. Does that mean that Kaz is going to do me dirty like just a random name Philip did? No. Philip and I could have been
Fuck
incredibly
you,
close.
Philip.
Philip and I could have been incredibly close, but we could have had a serious falling out that changed that relationship. Does that mean I'm not going to trust Kaz with the same type of information? No. Does that mean I'm silly or wearing my heart on the sleeve for sharing everything all willy nilly? No. It means I'm taking a chance and I'm leading myself into that and understanding that this could be extremely beneficial. And I feel like I can become really great friends with him or seek a lot more knowledge again,
Well, yeah,
because
because
knowledge for me is big.
even through all of this, Raz lives close to me, and the thing is at the end of the day with these streams, I make money to pay my bills streaming. Like I wouldn't be able to stream full time if I couldn't pay my bills with it. And that's a really big, like, it makes it a business. So as much as I love to have a community and be able to be there for them and everything, at the same time I'm having to extend trust to an extent with Team Confide. Anyone on that's a big reason why when we're scouting people, it's important to everyone in Confide to have a say in who can join the team and who can't, because at the end of the day, this is also a big thing that provides us, and the goal is to be able to do this for a living, to be able to stream for a living. So I'm trusting my dreams and aspirations in a way that have a huge part to do with Raz, because Confide is one of the biggest parts of my streaming existence, and also anyone else on Confide. That plays a big part in our career. And to have a negative image is a really big thing as a streamer. So like we have had to take people off of Confide, but it's an amazing thing to see these people act like adults, and instead of slandering and becoming this really big issue that will draw negative attention to both sides, everyone's been able to have this even though we may not have gotten along, to have enough decency and trust within each other to not put our names out there and rub it in the dirt. And
Just have understanding.
that's a big thing. Most people are trustworthy. The harder part about trust is finding those people that you can trust with the deeper and darker things. And that's something that like you have to feel out. That's not something that someone can just instantly provide. Like I've talked to Raz about things that are going on in my life that nobody else knows. And I've trusted him with that part of me. And he's also done the same. And neither of us have gone and talked in a separate direction about our business. And that's a basis of trust. And I've never even met Raz in person. So, which will happen at some point because he literally lives like 3 hours away from me.
Yeah, true.
So I think that when it comes to the baby steps of trusting someone, it's literally just taking the baby steps. If you see someone that you're like, man, I think I might be able to trust them with something small. Go to lunch with them and just have a conversation. It doesn't even have to be about anything important. And at that point, you're trusting them with your time. And then as you progress in this relationship with trusting someone, eventually there's going to be bigger things that you can trust. It's also okay to test people's ability to keep things to themselves. So like I know for a fact, before I've ever talked to Raz about a lot of the things that I've talked to him about, I've talked to him about smaller things that still would have mattered if they went somewhere, but they didn't go anywhere. So that gave me, those were the baby steps that I didn't even know I was taking in our relationship to the point where I could trust him. And I think that like literally anyone on Confide, I could tell them the deepest, darkest parts of myself. And I know for a fact that even if they ended up not being on Confide anymore, that they wouldn't take that and put it out in the open. Literally every single person on Confide, I know that I could trust. And that's a beautiful thing to have. And that's not to say that they're never going to make a decision that could hurt me. That's just me knowing I can trust someone and putting that trust into them. Whether that plays out the way it needs to or not is out of my control. So at the end of the day, are you going to sit here and worry about something that's out of your control? Are you going to worry about the future and the past? Or are you going to worry about the here and now, provide the trust, and if it goes sideways, take that experience, learn from it, build on it, and then keep going forward and trusting? Because at the end of the day, no matter who you are or what you're trying to do, trusting other people is such an integral part of life if you don't want to be alone.
And that's, again, it doesn't have to be with significant others either. It could be with, like you mentioned, friends. It could be with people in your family. It could be with people you're just slowly bringing on, acquaintances, or sometimes strangers becoming acquaintances. Pure example for me as well, and I'm going to lean more on the relationship side, is that when I started, the next step of our relationship between Gracie and I, or Goose, as some of you guys know her as, I let her know slowly what skeletons, I guess you can say, I had in my closet, or what things I've held from others that I haven't shared publicly because I didn't know how people would react. And I just started laying them out slowly, and I gave it to her at face value. And I said, look, this is me. I'm telling you these things not to scare you, but to have you understand and hope that, you still appreciate me for who I am. And outside of a relationship, you can still do that with friends as well. You can take those baby steps and share what you feel necessary. Know that, and don't expect to have that reciprocated immediately, because it's a lot of trial and error. But know that once you hit that certain point with that person and it starts to get a little eerie or feel a little odd, it might not be working out. That doesn't mean you have to sever ties with that person. That just means like, hey, maybe this will take time. But you got to have the confidence to lean into that slowly. And
we're all human at the end of the day. We all make
right.
mistakes. Nobody's perfect. But the big thing with that, in order to assess if someone's made a mistake or betrayed you, in order to assess whether it's worth giving them or trying to rebuild that trust, is are they feeling guilty or are they feeling remorse? Are they only identifying? So basically, this is the big difference between guilt and remorse. Are they only identifying with their pain from their guilt, or are they identifying with your pain because of what they did and taking responsibility of what they did? There's a very big difference between those two things, because guilt is their feeling for themselves and shame is their feeling for themselves. And yeah, they're probably going to feel that regardless. But if they don't have remorse for your pain that they caused you, they're not worth your time. It's just not. It's not going to work out. It's going to end up going right in a circle and they're going to do whatever they did again. But if they feel genuine remorse to a point where they're like, man, I did this and this hurt this person, this inflicted pain on them in some way, shape, or form, it hits to a point where it's like they genuinely care about what you're feeling out of what they did, as opposed to not caring about what you're feeling or how it affected you and only caring about how their guilt and remorse has affected themselves. So that's a big step on when it comes to second chances or third chances, or and the thing is at the end of the day, it's about what you're comfortable with. If you don't want to give someone a second chance, you have free will to take your life the way you take your life and run with it. So like if
It's ultimately your choice.
If someone's done something to you that you feel like they're not worth you, then dip. Like just dip. At the end of the day, you have the control to leave. And that's why trust should be an easier thing to approach, because at the end of the day, if they do fuck you over, as long as they didn't kill you, right? Then you're going to be stronger out of it. That's the big thing, is most people you can trust not to just up and kill you. But if you're worried about like someone kidnapping you or someone you love and them killing you, and because you didn't know them and you trusted the wrong person, one, that's out of your control. But two, if you really want to comprehend that side of things, that's just a matter of doing research and understanding the psychology behind those things and being prepared for those things. I've reached out to someone I care about recently about it's a packet that you do. It's called an If I Go Missing form, and it's 27 pages of information that if you went missing, this is what's going to help the people that love you find you, and help the police, if it comes to that point, find you. And you can prepare for things. You can take time to prepare for things. That's another thing that can help you obtain that trust. You're muted. I can't hear you.
Oh, it's just vaping real quick. Sorry. No, big fakes though. I think it just takes a lot of time to understand when to trust somebody. I would never myself. Props to you for 27-page packet. Yo, nay. For me, it's always been the people who I trust most or I confide in most will know exactly where to look for me, because they'll know my tendencies and my personality and where to go. But that's just because I'm very basic like that. So
well, the 27-page packet is actually like, because I'm a paranoid fuck, and it's what it is it's like your fingerprints, people that you care about, that you spend time with, that might know your location if something were to happen to you, all the way down to what your Facebook password is or your phone password. Because if you got kidnapped, Raz, and it was by someone who had intentions of killing you, typically, statistically speaking, if you haven't been found within 24 hours, you're probably dead. The hope is that whatever it is helps whoever it is find you, right? So what you would do is you'd fill out this packet, and then this would be given to someone that you have the utmost trust for with that information. So at the end of the day, if you go missing, a lot of the times when victims go missing, their phone gets left behind, but the phone companies don't have a right to infiltrate the phone without a warrant. So essentially, someone you trust having that password could literally save your life in a situation. And it's weirder to think about for me and you because we're grown men, and typically we're not. It's not always. Sometimes we are the target of kidnapping or murder. But when it comes to women and children, having, like, let's say you have a daughter and she's 13, 14 years old, having all of that information could be what saves her life one day if someone were to kidnap her and try to take her
Right.
away. So for me, I'm paranoid as fuck. I watch a lot of true crime. I think that
Yeah.
anything can happen any day and anyone can do anything to you, which, you know, like, I have trust issues, I do. But there's things that what I'm saying is with the trust, there's precautions you can take to feel better about trusting people. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
To protect yourself.
Absolutely.
Shut the fuck up,
And
Jesus.
but to touch base as well on the opposite side of the spectrum, because we talked a lot about positive ways and how to lean into that trust. But for those who are just coming out of a situation where you've trusted someone very heavily and you've gotten burned very badly and how to process that. So the natural reaction for most individuals, and it's a very primal behavior that we utilize here, and it's a way to protect ourselves, right? Because you can be very vulnerable in your emotions, regardless if you're somebody who physically or openly displays those emotions, or if you keep very much to yourself. The usual first response is to build walls.
Mm-hmm.
And first, I'm going to tell you it's okay to do. Don't think that it's not okay. A lot of people tell you that's the exact opposite of what you want to do. It's very natural. It's the first thing you're going to lean into. I personally want to say that it's extremely important to understand that you don't want to make those walls 20 stories high, because when you want to take that chance with the next person, whether it be in a relationship or a friendship, you're challenging this individual that you're starting to really enjoy to scave that wall for you. And being completely fair and honest, I've done this myself, and it can be very, very selfish because I'm not allowing myself to be happy. I'm leaning into the negative emotions that I have, and I'm not being fair to that person by giving them that chance. And it's because I've been hurt in some way, shape, or form. And it can be very detrimental when you start to break down that walls and meet that person halfway. Now, I'm not saying that wall has to be depleted, but know that once you feel confident and comfortable yourself, it's okay to make that, instead of 20 stories high, make that maybe 8 stories high and work your way down and take those necessary steps to begin starting to trust that person. I hate that I use the word or the name Philip. Fucking Jesus.
I think with the walls thing, it's also important to comprehend that for me, I think it's better to be open, and I don't approach having walls, and I try not to have walls because it's been something I've done in the past, and it's closed me off from the ability to trust and from the ability to develop new relationships. I think an analogy that I would use is boundaries, is having boundaries. So here's you, and here's a circle, and inside of that circle, they're safe. But if they go outside of the boundaries, if they go out of bounds, that's when you need to be able to be open and communicate about things. That's not to say if they're in the circle, you have to be open with them instantaneously. You can, instead of having walls, you have boundaries. So you have, like, they have to achieve a certain level of trust to be able to get that openness out of you. But if you do something that steps out of bounds, that's the point where it's like, okay, now, you know, you can think of it as levels. Like, you have this small circle, and then a bigger circle, and then a bigger circle, and a bigger circle. And as you're developing a relationship, the goal is to be able to allow someone into the smallest circle. But as they break boundaries, they're going actually further out. And comprehending what those boundaries are for you and how to openly communicate them. So for me, a big thing that I had to overcome was, even though I'm very big into sexual humor in my stream and everything, is once Rachel started showing up on stream more, there was a lot of joking sexual advances towards her that really caused a lot of emotional turmoil for me. And so that's a boundary. The important part is I can't just expect someone to follow the boundary. I have to make it very clear with open communication that, hey, this is a boundary, don't cross it. Then once they know it, it's out of your control whether they cross it or not. What's in your control is whether they're still in your life or not.
Right, absolutely. And
You
that's
know,
where you can take the scissors and start snipping where necessary. I'd
it's
also say
important
at
to
the
know how
same
to set
time,
boundaries.
I challenge you as an individual because we talked about building walls. I think it's also important for growth that I see more that you're in a octagon and that 7 ways around you, you've put up a wall with a mirror that faces back at yourself because you're blocking yourself out. But the moment somebody walks to that open area, you get to decide as to whether or not they come in or not. I
Yeah.
think a really big important part of learning how to trust and being able to trust others as well is knowing that you have to have the self-confidence and trust in yourself that you're making the greatest decisions.
Right.
And again, going back to practice what you preach, sir, you build yourself. And again, the stand off topic here, friend standpoint, you got a big heart, you let a lot of people in, and you're a good guy. But at the same time, you don't allow yourself to feel, and you build those walls around yourself with mirrors to where you're looking back at yourself and you're not happy with what you see. So you're building walls around and allowing people to come in on the back end and join that circle, but you're not dealing with what's at face value. And it's the way that you're feeling and understanding how you are and the confidence that you have and the trust in yourself that you're making the right decisions and that you're doing the right things. And I know a lot of that goes back to what we discussed earlier where you're letting a lot of your darker demons come in. But I think just as a friend for you personally, I think it's really important that you bring those, like you said, levels lower and lower and lower over time.
Right.
And that goes for anybody as well. If you feel that you're in a very similar situation, if you put walls up, just make sure you're not also safeguarding yourself or capping yourself in because you might be able to trust somebody with that one open doorway, but you're not building your confidence enough to say it's okay to lean into this wholeheartedly, or it's okay to feel, or it's okay to be happy again, or whatever the situation may be. And I think it is, like you said, very important while you're in any kind of healing process to set a boundary or understand a boundary and understand the way you're feeling and what you're okay with and not okay with. When the person who's entering your life or in that deeper circle does not respect those boundaries and continuously crosses them, even if it's for comedic humor or comedic relief, they're not they're not the person who's meant to be there. You're
Right.
allowing them to be there because you're still scared of losing another individual who knows so much about you. But it's very important to sever ties with that person because you're going, like Jesus said earlier, you're going back to that toxic X syndrome. You're allowing someone to be toxic, even if it's for comedic purposes or they're trying to be funny. They're not allowing you to grow, whether it be spiritually, mentally, physically, whatever the case may be, emotionally. You need to allow yourself to grow and you need to break down some of those walls over time. You personally have a lot more to focus on. I love the growth already from just the 2 weeks that we talked, or 2 weeks ago when we talked. You're already advancing and taking so many more steps. And I think that's so much more important than anything else we're talking about. Not to
Mm-hmm.
say you guys aren't amazing, but just from a friend standpoint, it's outstanding to see already how much growth you have. But that's for anyone if you feel like you're putting walls up or you're capping yourself in, start to break those down slowly and learn that you need to trust yourself, you need to be confident in yourself or grow that confidence and then be able to lean on that next relationship or that next friendship more easily. And I think that's very, very important.
Yeah, definitely. Corey's in your chat. He said, "I'm following the Sith Order in Star Wars because their teaching actually helped me." So that goes along with the whole line of distractions and everything. A big reason why I watch anime and what helps me overcome a lot of my negative thinking. I think that one of the biggest ones is definitely Naruto because the concept of how they treat each other in their village, their family, and even people outside of their village. So if you've never watched Naruto, you're not going to understand a lot of what I'm saying, but I'm going to say it because it's Naruto and it's lit. Uh, at the very beginning, when Gara shows up at the Chunin exams and almost kills Rock Lee, and instead of hating Gara for it, Naruto chooses to open himself up to Gara and obtains this friendship that he would have never thought he had. And then this deep, dark thing that Gara was ended up becoming a very big light in his own village and providing a sense of security for a lot of people. So I think it's important, especially falling into that trust thing, is it's okay to trust blindly, Ramsey. It's okay. That's fine. It's just knowing when boundaries have been crossed and approaching things. So like I think a big thing that Naruto did teach me was not to give up on the people that you love. So when you, if you've ever watched Naruto, you comprehend that one of the biggest parts of the story was between him and Sasuke, and how Sasuke moved over to this darker side of things, and enveloped himself in hate for his brother who killed his entire family. But Sasuke was Naruto's best friend in Naruto's eyes, and that was like his brother. So Naruto chased him to the end of the earth. And in the end, which it won't always work out this way, this is obviously a cartoon and a story, but in the end, his efforts were worth it. But it shows you that you can devote to something and love something that's destroying itself and turn it around to be a good thing. You can show compassion and trust to people who may not necessarily deserve it, but if it's what your heart wants to do, then fucking do it. That at the end of the day, it's your life, and what makes you happy makes you happy. And that's why
it's a really good representation.
Yeah, anime is just like, there's so much in it, and every single one that I watch, there's so much to learn. But Naruto is probably one of the biggest ones. Even running from the Pain saga, where Pain, he just went through a lot of pain through his entire childhood, and so like he wanted the world to feel that, and the only thing that could turn him around was Naruto in the end. And that was probably my favorite part of the entire series, was because such a dark person and a dark soul going through so much darkness and killing so many people turned around and changed his decision and brought everyone back and sacrificed himself because of the love that Naruto showed. And I think it just shows how powerful love can be in your day-to-day and in your existence as a human being, that at the end of the day, all you can do is control your actions in the moment. You can't control the past and the future, but in the moment, if you are doing your best to show love to those around you and the things around you, you're doing it right. That's about it.
That's really well said, honestly. And I love what Jesus said as well about the Pain saga. Those who don't understand pain can never understand true peace. And, you know, there's always a balance of good and evil, and there's always a balance of light and darkness. Now, before I get into this next topic, I think I'm going to utilize an anime reference as well, and one that resonates very, very heavily with me, and one that I fell in love with very deeply to this day. So Drew says, I'm more afraid of people not accepting me for me. I think it's because I myself am afraid not accepting myself for who I am, and in turn makes it hard for me to even talk about how I feel or open up. I think that the way that Kaz utilized the sayings of Gaara, or the embodiment of Gaara, is a really great representation. And believe it or not, there's actually some psychological studies about the character developments and the way that characters are from Naruto that have helped people cope and understand the way that they are emotionally, because it deals with very real world situations just in a fantasy base. And I think that's one reason why anime can be so powerful for those who can comprehend and understand what's going on, more than the face value of just cartoons. So much more the storyline and the character development that you see and how people live vicariously through those products or people. So for me, from a friend standpoint, for both Andrew and for Kaz, I see you guys, if you guys are familiar with My Hero Academia, I see you guys more as Deku, in my personal opinion, though we might fantasize being anyone else and see ourselves as embodying a different character. Not to say that you're useless, because I'm going more for the development of saying that you both weigh on yourselves so heavily for wanting to hit that next level and wanting to be so much more, and consistently proving, not to others, but to yourself, that you're great, that it's suffocating. And you forget to turn around and look behind you and see how much people are here to love and support you and accept you for who you are, and are here to push you and consistently grow to be that next level. I think you both, again, coming from a friend standpoint, for those who need to hear this as well, it's very, very important to go ahead and take a step back and lean on those people who are there for you. Because no, we're not here just because we have to be, because we don't have to be. I can be asleep right now. The 12 people, I can't math, but the over 10 people that are already here chilling with us don't have to be here right now, but they're here because they want to be and have this experience with us, and they want to show their love and support. And I think a lot of times the both of you, including myself, can forget that. So don't ever forget to look back and see how many people are there with a smile on their face, cheering you on and saying, you got this, and we can't wait to see where you're going to go from. So it's funny too, because I see myself a lot. The three of us have so much similarities in personality. I see us embodying Deku very heavily. because we put so much pressure on ourselves that it can be exhausting at times because we don't understand how to feel. We just consistently see a goal and we want to hit that goal.
And just
We want to hit the next
overthinking,
step.
constantly overthinking.
Yep.
And
Just
I
like Deku
think,
does.
yeah, and there was also a point where, like, no matter how, because I actually literally just started My Hero completely over, so that Lauren could watch it
Such a
yesterday.
great series.
Because it's my favorite anime. And I was like, okay, Lauren, you have to watch this. She's making me watch Supernatural, so I was like, okay, you're watching my show then. And the very first episode is all about how, like, Deku has nothing. He doesn't have a quirk. He doesn't have a future, but he never gives up on that future. And he
Right.
acknowledges what he needed to hear from others. Like, his mom at one point was like, "No, I don't think you're going to be a hero because you're not going to have a quirk." And Deku was like, "Well, I don't, like, if only you knew what I needed to hear." But even though he didn't get what he needed to hear, he kept pursuing his dream. And there's one point where he was talking to All Might, and he's like, "Do you think that I could ever be a hero even though I don't have a quirk?" And he was just looking for affirmation from other people instead of just getting it from himself. And it's something that I consistently do too, is look for shit from other people to make me feel better when I should be getting it from myself. But at the end of the day, we do what we do. We look up to who we look up to. And the concept of us feeling worthless and feeling like we don't have anything, if you watch the series and you comprehend how life can change things, in the end, Deku is so much more than just a quirkless human being and becomes so much more useful and actually becomes a hero. And that's the potential that every single human being has. And I think that's one of the biggest, because, like, two big things for me is the effect that music can have on my mental health and the effect that anime can have on my mental health. Those are huge, and those are both really big forms of art that I appreciate a lot. But with anime, a lot of people don't watch anime, but it's becoming a more and more popular thing. And it's because Japanese culture is so much more in tune with not being religious. They're so much more in tune with being realistic and approaching issues in the world from a standpoint that's not like, oh, God's going to take care of this. It's more of a, how can we take care of this? How do we handle these things? So when
The
you're
strength
watching
individual
anime,
and the individual, excuse me.
yeah, when you're watching anime, you're actually learning a lot about character building, even though you don't know it. And you may not realize it, but your favorite characters, there's a reason they're your favorite characters. It may be the struggles they're going through being similar to yours, or their personality being similar to yours. But Deku is definitely one of my favorite, and Todoroki's my other favorite. That's why I have them both tatted on my leg. So for me, it's like, that's been one of the biggest animes in my entire life, next to Naruto. And it's okay, and it's good, actually, to approach movies, TV shows, series, cartoons that you like, and take those and let them influence your mental health. Because if it helps you, it helps you, regardless of what others say. Don't ever let someone take something you love and make you hate it. Don't ever do that. Always love what you love and be who you are.
Regardless of how different it may be, it makes you who you are. And the people, like in this situation, again, I'm going to say, don't ever forget to look back behind you and see how many people are smiling at you with a thumbs up saying you got this. Because there are people who are supporting you. And that just doesn't mean for Kaz, doesn't mean for Drew, it means for each and every one of you. Take time to understand that it's not always about looking forward. Don't think it's negative to look back and see how many people are standing behind you saying, let's fucking do this. Like,
As
let's
you
go.
said, Rock Lee really came through in Naruto, not being born with a whole lot of natural talent, but he works hard and never gives up, and that's his gift. And that's just facts, bro. That's like, Rock Lee is one of my all-time favorite characters because he proved to be one of the most powerful ninja in existence. Same with Guy. And they didn't use any ninjutsu or genjutsu. They just worked so fucking hard training to get to the point with their taijutsu that they could compete with people who had, like, otherworldly abilities. And that's something
And
that, like,
real quick too, for a
man.
translation for people who don't understand, think of it a lot like people who have an advantage, whether it be financial or whatever the other situation may be, and people telling you you can't do something because you're different or you're in a different position. What he's referring to with Guy and Rock Lee being as strong and being the strongest out there was because they consistently were persistent with a goal in mind and a dream to be the best. And even though everyone else told them they couldn't, they never stopped and they never gave up on their dreams and they achieved them. Now, it wasn't easy. They had lots of struggles and they saw many people beside them who were far better off at the time. But that doesn't mean that whatever path you might be taking right now, it doesn't mean that it's any different or it's any worse than the person next to you. Whatever path you're on to become the better version of you or the person that you want to be, continue striving at that and continue to grow, because one day you will be the best and you will get there. But again, don't ever think that you can't turn around. Just like with Rock Lee and Guy, who had endless love and support. They just, like yourself, were very headstrong and they never took time to look back and see who was there to support them because they were so driven on one goal in mind. You got to remember to take steps back and breathe, because it will suffocate you and it will consume you. And then it turns into something very negative. Take time, and if you need to, lean back from time to time. We're here for you.
Yeah, and you can find that. It's not just anime. You can find inspiration like that in
Everything.
Basically anything. Like my favorite superheroes, people are like, I think you can tell a lot about a person by who their favorite superhero is. I've always had, like, if I ask you who your favorite superhero is and you tell me Iron Man, I know that you're all about like brain shit. But for me, my top two favorite superheroes are Daredevil and the Punisher, and it has a lot to do with the anti-heroism with the Punisher. Even though what he's doing may be considered wrong, he's doing it because he believes it's right. Whereas Daredevil's the opposite. He's like, he follows a lot of Catholic religion shit. So he stands up for the people who need stood up for, even if it's the Punisher. But everything he does is for a more righteous cause, and that's why he won't kill people and he won't hurt people. And there's a very big inner conflict between Daredevil and the Punisher when they do link up, because the Punisher doesn't give a shit if you fucked up, you're going to get a bullet to the skull. Whereas Daredevil's the exact opposite and doesn't want things like that to happen. It's almost like a good conscience, bad conscience. But the biggest thing for them is like, neither of them have superpowers. They're heroes without superpowers. Like Daredevil's blind, which you can kind of consider a superpower, but it's not. He literally like is just good at what he does physically because he trains a lot. And the Punisher was a Marine, so he just like is good at what he does because he trained a lot. And as opposed
he never
to
gave up.
And Iron Man doesn't have superpowers. He used his brain to create the things he created, whereas the Hulk has superpowers. Spider-Man has powers that were given to him, stuff like that. So for me, it's like being able to overcome the odds through sheer dedication and hard work, and then doing what you think is right. That's why they were always like a really big playoff for me. But it's okay. Like you can even find it from retrospects of like if you like Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings, or you like fucking dramatic shit like Grey's Anatomy or whatever it may be. You can find life lessons in any of these things, and you can let those things affect you and also let them help you. Because I've watched all of Grey's Anatomy, and it's helped me feel things that I may not have felt before. You know what I mean?
Sorry, I just read Jesus' comment. Fuck.
Hold on, I need to read it. When the plumber, lady customer can't pay, he finds shut the fuck up.
But in all seriousness, like looking into just not outside of anime, you can even find this in music, guys. There's so many different ways. It's just that for myself, for Kaz, people like Drew as well, anime's been able to teach us lessons that normal books or normal TV shows couldn't, because it resonates differently with us. And like for Corey, it's Star Wars. It resonates with him most heavily. We all have a different method of transportation for us to consume the information and consume the way we're feeling and embody the way we see ourselves, or the way that we live through these characters vicariously for their strengths. And we understand their stories because they're so similar, or we feel them being similarly to ours. So I think it's important that in any situation, having any type of growth, and think of yourself as a character in your own story, having character progression and having character growth is really important. But know that there's always going to be trials that you're going to face, sometimes minor, sometimes huge. You will overcome them, and don't be afraid to rely on the friends next to you to get there. Because in every one of those situations, they relied, or if they had to, they relied and they fell back and knew that somebody was there to support them. just like each and every one of you are on a nightly basis for us. Just like we have these moments here to try and give back and support and show that we are here and we care for you. And of course, even outside of stream, you can always hit us up or drop in any of our chats, and you know we're going to be here. It's just
Yeah.
the
And
basics of
for
it.
some people, it won't be TV shows or music. It could be religion. I'll be
Mm-hmm.
honest. I've gone to church a lot recently, these past couple of months, and it's helped me a lot. And that may not be that I believe in the Bible or everything that happened in the Bible happened or anything like that, but the concepts that are given to me by the pastor who talks and stuff like that, in the moments that I need them, help me a lot. And I do believe in a higher power, and I believe that love is that higher power, which is something that goes in line with Christianity. I can't say that I'm religious, but I can definitely say I'm spiritual, and I can definitely say God has touched my life in ways that I'd be happy to explain to anyone that wanted to hear it. But um, you can find inspiration and you can find these lessons and values anywhere, and that's another one of those big plays on trust. For me, I had a lot of issues trusting people, but if you're going to a place where you're more likely to find someone trustworthy, like if you go to church, these are people that are actively going somewhere at their own will to be spiritual or try to be in connection with their spiritual side. It's not a guarantee they're a good person, but it's definitely like more of a likelihood that you could trust them with your information or whatever you need to trust someone with. So
And you need to understand that there's other people as well who are always out there willing and desiring to seek understanding or greater knowledge or greater empowerment. You're not alone. And whatever you might use as that resource, utilize it. Whatever is beneficial to you and gives you a new methodology or new way of thinking to help you understand what you're going through or process and have that character progression, I think that's very important. Like for myself, I'm not a very, uh, I'm not big on religion per se, but I too consider myself spiritual. And I think it's very important to understand that there are greater things out there than yourself, and that sometimes you just need to ask for a little assistance, whatever it may be. Because whatever you're going through, I always say this, and some people might take this the wrong way or take this lightly. Temporary problems should never escalate to permanent solutions. You should never try and fix a temporary problem by saying, "Oh, I don't need this," and just get rid of it entirely, because then you're not doing yourself a justice. It's more of an injustice, and you're never going to grow from it. Like for myself, and I talked about this previously, for my temporary problem, I thought that writing notes and saying goodbye to the world was my methodology, and that. Do I use that as a crutch? Do I use that as a part of me that I'm afraid to talk about? No, I openly talk about that with everyone because I see that as something of an empowerment for myself of knowing that was my absolute lowest point, and it's made me who I am today. That I had somebody there who was willing to reach their hand out and say, "Nah, dude, that's not it. Come on, let me show you what else is out there," and it saved me. And I think that's really, really important for everyone to understand that don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help, is what I'm getting at. If you're in a dark, dark situation like that, seek medical help or professional help if you know your social help or the people around you aren't enough.
yeah, and I think you can find that help anywhere. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but like if you don't have insurance and you can't afford therapy, there are other avenues you can take. Um, I've heard a lot of good stories about people going to churches and seeking out help from the ministry, and a lot of the times churches will actually go out of their way to try to help you pay for therapy and try to help you overcome your obstacles. At the end of the day, you have to do everything though. It's not, I can't go to therapy for you. I can't go to church for you. Like that's, you have to take the baby steps to achieve what you need to achieve. But
And it's all progress, regardless of the size of the step. It's all progress,
yeah, that's why
and
I
you
say
have
baby
to remember.
steps, is because it's one day at a time and it's just baby steps. Like if you set a goal and you don't reach that goal, but you still gained like so many steps towards that goal, you're still going forward.
That's a really good question, Dan, and I love that question. I'm gonna leave that out there for a second so Cass can read that as well. And even if that methodology and that means of transportation that helped you, Corey, are outstanding, man. That's great that that's helping. It honestly is. You found something that gave you a better teaching and understanding. Okay, so Kaz read the comment, so I want to go ahead and touch base with what you said here, Dan. I spoke about this a little bit earlier, and I speak very freely about this. So I'm gonna straight up say the statement. Hi, my name's Raz, 25. At the age of 19 at the time, I was in a depressed state to the point where I wanted to commit suicide. I wrote 7 notes, quit my day job, had nothing left. My family had left me in a state I was unfamiliar with. I had no one else around me, and I felt like I was alone. I attempted to take my life. Because my roommate came home early, I'm still here. I say that very blatantly and a very plain statement because I'm not afraid to sit here and say that that was my absolute, for me, weakest point. It's the point in my life where I felt that I was in such a deep hole that there was nothing else, and that was my solution to a very temporary problem. When you are unafraid to speak about that freely, stigmas don't exist. Regardless of what social media tells you or society tells you, fuck them. Talk openly, talk freely. Those who care will be here to listen. Those who don't can keep on scrolling. And that's the way I view it. Not everyone's going to accept you 100% for who you are, but the ones that are here and listening to your cry for help are going to be there 100%. And I think that's most important. Everyone else is only here for the hee hee ha ha moments and not for the moments where you're in your darkest corner asking for help are not your friends. There are people that are there for the moment. You need people who are going to be there who are going to strengthen you. And B, for my example, my roommate who walked through the door accidentally. You need to have those people who you can indefinitely say, this person changed the way I thought. This person helped me. This person changed my life. And I think that's so, so important. Don't worry about what other people think. Fuck stigmas. Speak freely, speak loudly, scream it at the top of your lungs if because dude, there are people here who are gonna listen. Absolutely, Corey. So Corey says here, like, what it teaches you is how to empower the individual you, and I implore y'all to please find the one thing that rings true with no matter with true with who you are, and y'all, I hope you find that one thing that helps you. So to kind of translate what from what I'm understanding here is like he's 100% right. Find one thing that absolutely is your saving grace or that gives you that next leg up to build that progression and continue growing. And hell, I tell the stories so often. I can be streaming the happiest game in the world. I can be playing Fall Guys and be like, hey, I try to kill myself. I talk about it super freely, and I don't mean to be funny. I don't mean to make a light joke about it. I'm being 100% serious. And I'm saying that not to make someone feel bad or want to stay around and learn my story. No, I'm telling you that because I want to normalize it. And I don't think we normalize that enough. So speak freely, speak loudly, fuck the stigma. The stigma exists because we allow it to. When you break that, it's just a concept. Don't make it a reality. If that answers your question, Dan. Absolutely, Jesus. That's a really powerful statement. So I want to touch base with that too. Talking about relating to things that one talk Brian needs to have about suicide, I can relate to. It's like having a way out every day and knowing you are strong enough not to do it. So this might offend somebody when I say this, but I'm speaking from the heart when I say this. And know this, please. I'm saying this in confidence to benefit you and myself. I live in Texas. I'm somebody who enjoys pew pews. I'm a hunter. I like going to ranges. I'm not shy about that. And I never will be. If you don't like that about me, I'm sorry. That same gun that I attempted to take my life with, I still own. I've gone hunting with it more than once, and I go to ranges frequently with it. I never got rid of it despite everyone else's requests because it's still me. I know that it's available. There's one sitting in front of me on my desk. I know that at any point in time, if I felt like that deep, I could do it. But I myself have given myself the ability and the power to walk away from that and say, yo, that's not the answer. I need to go take a hot shower with the lights off and just think and vibe and breathe or listen to music or go hang out with my friends or go hunting or go fishing and get out of my own head and get into a new fresh space where I can be happy and allow myself to be happy. I don't let those moments crush me down or kick me to the curb again. So, hi, I'm Raz, and that's me. So we're gonna wrap up here roughly, I'd say in about 5 minutes. If you guys have any other comments or questions or concerns, we definitely like to hit them as well. We've been at about 2.5 hours already, and we don't want to drag this out too long to keep everything nice and fresh and keep you looking forward to
Yeah.
the next cast as well.
You also don't want to take too much weight at once.
It can be really heavy, and I've got that so many times with these talks. So no, just take what you think is beneficial from these, and we put a lot out there to tackle as many issues at once for a lot of people that need to digest this slowly or
Yeah.
understand this slowly. So
Yeah.
take what you need to.
I don't think you should stray away from mentioning things in chat, Mickey. I think that it's a safe space. And I think it's also important that if things do get too heavy, to step away if you need to, if anyone is feeling that. I know for me, suicide is like a really touchy subject. And it's a really heavy subject for me because of past experiences. But that's why I'm just not speaking on it, because I don't have that space right now at all. I don't have that space. Some
And that's
point
fair
I
to say
will
that.
open up about those things, with myself
And I
and
wasn't always
and
that
things
way.
that I've gone through. Right,
Yeah, you
right.
have a lot of personal ties to it. I completely understand it, and I respect that, which is why I didn't ask, like, hey, man, go for it. I just kept going. Because everyone handles things differently, and we have to understand that. We have to respect each other's space and respect each other's mindsets and capabilities. I talk about this very freely. It wasn't always like this. I can promise you that. It was never this easy for me. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes
Yeah,
time. It took a lot of growth. And for me to understand who I am, who I want to be, and where I want to be able to speak freely about how I feel and my past. And I don't hide that from anyone at all. And I never will. I'll scream it at the top of my lungs for anybody to hear it. But it wasn't always like that. And that's one thing everyone needs to remember when you're dealing with anything that's heavy or that is very tragic. It takes time, it takes strength, it takes trust, it takes love, it takes understanding. And that's as simple as it is. Absolutely, Corey, man. It takes time, dude.
I also did not mentally prepare for this at all. Usually I'll take a space and really stop and breathe and prepare myself. But tonight we were supposed to have a confidence coach on, and we were supposed to be talking about confidence. And really, he was going to take the stage because he's written a book on it, and it's how he lives his life. He's a lifestyle coach, which is something that I've been getting ready to pursue, is becoming a life coach myself. But
I think you'd be good at it.
yeah, I'm really excited to pursue it, but it's like it's
Just
going to be
remember to
baby
take your own
steps.
advice.
But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so like right now I experience flooding a lot, and I can tell you I'm definitely flooding with a lot of emotions right now. That for me, when I get flooded, I really have to like feel it before I can bring things to light about what I'm feeling, because I
Process.
I know I'll say the wrong things. But uh I think that at the end of the day, I wasn't prepared for everything that we covered tonight. I opened up a lot of things, and you did too. Um,
It's heavy.
yeah, and
And
it's
I
good. It's
think,
good to be able to put things out there, but it's also really important that everybody takes their space.
mhm.
And I'm gonna take my space and step out. Um, but definitely, you can close this out. And um, I love everyone here. I appreciate all of you, and we'll be doing this next week. I don't know what. I think next week is Mother's Day, so we're doing Confidecast on Friday, and it's going to be a much lighter subject with a friend of
For sure.
mine who's an artist. He's a musician, but he does a lot with animal shelters, and we're going to be talking about the effects of animals with mental health. So that's going to be a very different conversation. It's going to be a lot more lighthearted. Um, I appreciate everyone that's been here through this darker conversation, and I appreciate you, Raz, for being who you are. I know I've heard this side of you before, but
Mhm.
like every time I hear it, it's just really heavy
It's
for
a
me
lot.
because of how
I
much
know.
I care about you as a person, and that I've lost people to suicide. So it's like
It's a
you
tough
know,
topic, man.
I've also had issues of my own. But I'm gonna step out. I'm gonna let you close it out and take it from there.
Much love, dude. Thanks for sharing tonight. All right, guys.